What's going on, everybody? We have some Microstrategy, or now called Strategy, news to talk about. They did buy some Bitcoin. We also have Iren stock and Mara reporting earnings this week. We're going to look at Cleanspark's chart. We have an important level to break. We're continuing to find resistance at the 50 MA as well. We'll talk about that in a second. We have PPI releasing this week, and we have CPI releasing this week. Two important inflation data points, and this will very likely change the probabilities of more or less rate cuts depending on our data. Now, first off, this MicroStrategy news. MicroStrategy, now known as Strategy, has acquired another 7,633 Bitcoin, and this is the first purchase after their company rebranding, because no one wants to be called Micro. Since making their first Bitcoin purchase back in the day in August 2020, Strategy has now accumulated a total of 478,740 Bitcoin, working their way up towards 500,000 Bitcoin in holdings, which they will do in a short amount of time. And their average price of Bitcoin, $65,000. And so far this year, they have acquired 32,340 Bitcoin, or about 7% of their total holdings. Under their 21-21 plan, Strategy still targets to issue and sell shares of their Class A commons to raise up to $21 billion in equity, $21 billion in fixed income securities over the next 3 years in order to accumulate more Bitcoin. We do have Iren reporting earnings on February 12. We also have Mara reporting 1 day earlier than Iren on February 11. Iren currently is in between two zones. They just cleared this roughly $12 zone and this $12.50 zone, which has been a previous resistance at times in the past. And now it either needs to break and hold over $13.50, or it's going to head back and test $12.50. Iren is expecting a record quarter for revenue. They're expecting a small loss. I think there's a good chance we get a surprise similar to Cleanspark. And quarter over quarter, this is massive revenue growth. Year over year, still massive revenue growth as well. And this is the first quarter since the halving where we should see an increase in revenue sequentially. And looking at Iren, it is still following its golden cross from way back in December of 2023. Some Bitcoin miners flipped and saw a death cross, read Cleanspark, and some Bitcoin miners have maintained it, getting close a few times to seeing that death cross, but it never happened yet. Iren is back over its 50 MA. It tested its 200 MA back in late January and it held it up. And I do think Iren has a good shot to test its roughly 1350 zone. If it can clear that, we're working to 15, then 16. On the break of 16, it's anybody's guess. That's where we get to price discovery mode. And Iren should end this cycle very strong. Now, looking at Cleanspark, it is a much more bearish chart. It is still under the 200 MA, the 50 MA. I'll show you guys real quick. It is finding resistance on the 50 MA. We had a death cross back in September of 2024, and Cleanspark still has some work ahead of it. It has a much more bearish chart than most miners, and it has an important zone that we need to flip, and we did test it and fail. This roughly 1250 area. It has been a resistance in the past. It has been a support in the past. Once we break this 1250 area, Cleanspark will look a lot better. It'll be over the 50 MA as well. But after that, it still has to work to take over the 200 MA, eventually get that golden cross. I did want to show you something on the MACD, and this is the first time we've seen this for a while. We got a crossover. Back in September of 2024, when Cleanspark bottomed out in the 8s, the MACD crossed, and we got a nice run. Basically a double. We are looking at similar right now. We got our cross on the MACD. Cleanspark has been hitting higher lows and higher highs. And while today's a red day, retail is very negative. Retail's feeling like, what's up with this? It's profitable. It had a good earnings. Why are other Bitcoin miners more green today when Cleanspark is red? I think a lot of that has to do with short interest. This has extremely high short interest compared to the industry, and shorts are repositioning. I do think there's no reason that this doesn't run. People can be bullish on this again once it breaks out and goes past 20, goes to 25, or you can be bullish now while earnings are good and while people are worried about the price. And those of you that were here back in 2022, 2023, what did sentiment feel like at its worst? When we were at $2, how did sentiment feel? When we were at $5, things were a lot like this before we started running. People were negative. People were feeling down and out. Despite this amazing earnings, how could you be bearish? They posted a profitable quarter. They beat revenue. We are back to revenue growth again. Nearly double, just quarter over quarter, double the revenue from a quarter ago. And what do they expect for next earnings? Another profitable quarter, another massive growth in revenue, the first quarter over $200 million. So in the end, you need to develop your own conviction. You need to find a reason why you're holding this. If you're holding it begrudgingly, why are you holding it? If you believe in the cycle, if you believe in the stock, if you believe that they're going to see some profitable quarters, continually through 2025, are you happy to see the price down so you can get more and get a better multiple? Or would you rather have the price spike now so you can get out and never come back? In the end, I think it's blatantly obvious that Cleanspark, Iren, many of the other Bitcoin miners, BTBT, these will all outperform Bitcoin from cycle low till top. That is the whole entire goal here. Some people's goal might be for a Cleanspark to see new all-time highs, get to $100, $200, insane prices that we probably won't see this cycle. And I think some of those people don't actually believe that. They're just hopeful. My goal has been and has always been seeing Cleanspark outperform cycle low till top, along with the other Bitcoin miners, and I do think we will see that. Mara also has earnings coming up. They're expecting a loss. They're expecting $187 million in revenue, which is a massive growth quarter over quarter. Again, finally getting to that revenue growth across the board for the Bitcoin miners. Earnings are turning around. Funny enough, Mara and Cleanspark are essentially at the same performance from cycle low till top. Cleanspark's actually doing a little better. Mara's up 435 from cycle low till here. Mara's working hard to hold this ascending support, and Mara had its death cross not too long ago. We're still under the 200 and the 50 MA. This is that quarter where earnings turns around, and price will turn around too. I do think we'll see some good earnings from the likes of Mara and Iren. I do think this is the shift that's starting to happen. We're starting to see earnings turn around. We're starting to see revenue grow again. Despite horrible retail sentiment right now, I still think the miners are going to give us some good returns, more than Bitcoin from here to the top. If Bitcoin gives us 50% from here, Bitcoin goes to 150K. I think the miners are going to give us much more than a 50% from here. And in Mara's case, it takes nearly a double just to get back to its 52-week highs. I do think earnings is the catalyst that's going to turn all of these Bitcoin miners around. We went from a period of declining revenue, unprofitability. The halving took effect, cut these Bitcoin miners' rewards in half, caused them to sell off, presenting us a fantastic buying opportunity for those of us that weren't able to buy back in the crypto winter in 2022 when Mara was $3, for example, when Cleanspark was under $2, for example, when Iren was $1, for example. If you missed that boat, this was your opportunity to add in while things were bad, while the Bitcoin miners were unprofitable. But let me know if you disagree. We'll see in the following months who's right and who's wrong. Now, moving on to PPI. We do have PPI on February 13, and it has been trending up lately. This is not good. We want to see this come down. CPI is being reported on February 12. This has been ticking up as well. And we have a forecast for this one. We don't have a forecast for the other one, but this one is expected to be a 2.9. If we come in over and see a 3% for the first time, I think the market will sell off, will panic. If we see this come in lower, that'll be a good sign. A good sign for the hope of more rate cuts. Otherwise, if things keep going higher, if inflation keeps ticking up, the likelihood of cuts gets lower and lower. I did want to quickly bring up the Fed Watch tool just to show you guys where it's at right now. It'll likely change as CPI and PPI come out, throughout this week. But looking at it right now, 91% probability of keeping rates current. The market is basically expecting a pause in the upcoming meeting. May is where things start shifting a little bit more in the favor of cuts, although still the majority expect a pause. It takes until June to where the probability of some sort of cut is more likely than no cut at all. A 45% chance of no cut, 43% chance of a 0.25 cut, and a 10% chance of a 50 basis point cut, a 0.6% chance of a 75 basis point cut. By June, the market expects more likely that there will be at least one cut than that there won't be. And as you continue through the year, you can see how the likelihood of, more and more cuts becomes more apparent. I think the highest likelihood is we are getting at least either 1 or 2 cuts, likely not just a pause throughout the rest of the year, and likely not more than 2 cuts in my opinion, unless inflation continues down, which we haven't been seeing lately. We've been seeing it tick up. But anyways, this will be an important week for 1, inflation, and 2, the Bitcoin miners. What is Iren and Mara going to report? How are you feeling about the Bitcoin miners right now? Are you feeling down and out, or are you an excited buyer? Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.